right, JHK here for the South China Morning Post, SCMP MMA. And joining me right now is PFL lightweight contender Kaitlin Young. Kaitlin, it's been a while. You're at the
Kind of.
hotel. How's quarantine
Yes.
treating you?
It's okay, actually, it's like I have some really good training partners with me, so it's not all bad for sure. You just kind of focus and get after it.
Is it a better environment for you compared to, let's say, regular fight weeks where you only have to be there for a couple days?
I mean, that's preferable. I'd rather be having access to all the things I have access to and doing camps as I please, but it, you know, there's also something to be said about like nobody can ask anything of you because you are locked down. Like, sorry, I'm just training. So it makes things easier in a sense.
So this quarantine compared to the last one I believe it was 17 days. This one,
Yeah.
12 days? Am I right?
Yep. 12 days.
Okay, it's not.
So it is shorter.
All right, so it's getting better.
Um,
I heard the next quarantine will probably be 5 days, so it might be back to
yeah,
normal.
and frankly, I'd prefer 17 or 5. The middle is kind of it like cuts up the training a little differently, but
Mm.
I mean, we're all doing the same thing, so
All right.
whatever.
All right. Did you do anything different heading into this one compared to the last one?
No, I mean, apart from packing more, I've got my packing game down a little
Mm-hmm.
better, but one of my corners is different, but apart from that, it's all the same.
All right. Let's start with your first fight, right? May 6th, you debuted against Cindy Dandois. You
Yeah.
like I said, you went through the quarantine. You're competing for a new promotion, and also you don't have to really drop down as much in weight. How much of effect did that have in that fight?
It's really interesting because I used to fight at 135, and it's really making me realize I was just having this conversation with one of my corners the other day, like how much particular someone like me, I'm a striker. I'm not trying to wrestle and like lay on somebody. Um, it's really nice having that option to be heavier. And I think I'm leaner at 55 than I was at 45 because of it. I'm still cutting a little bit, but it's not nothing like that 135 cut was. And it's interesting. Like I mean, you see why I think heavyweights have so much career longevity compared to the other divisions, and I wonder if that's why it feels really good because you just train and eat, train hard and eat, and you can be um a little bit more forgiving of yourself. And like if you're craving something for 3 days, like just have it. You
Mm.
don't have to be that strict. It's nice.
It definitely is nice, and you make a good point, right? The heavyweights, their prime is a little bit later in the years compared to
Yeah,
everybody else, so there must be something behind it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so the performance against Dandawa, what did you think about that? When you look back at it now, rewatching it and everything.
It was exactly what I wanted to do, more or less. There's some things that I thought would work, but she actually did change her structure significantly. She did a good job of that. Um, so I wasn't able to do all of it, but a lot of people, and it's interesting when people watch Cindy so frequently, they're just like, oh, she puts her chin up, and but she has a good chin, and I think people take that for granted. So they fight her in a way that you get excited when you blast somebody in the chin. So for me, it was a really important to stay within myself and not get excited trying to go for the finish because that's how she gets you, man. That's how she gets everybody.
Yeah, she draws
Um,
you in right that
and
way.
she gets them to play her game.
Mm.
Yeah. So it was important for me. It was not the way I liked to fight, but it was important for me to fight that way to win the easiest way possible.
Yeah, definitely the win is so important here, right? The
Yeah,
points.
exactly. Exactly. Of course, I would have liked to finish,
Mm.
but Dandua is somebody who doesn't give up on herself. She's still dangerous in the late rounds.
Yeah.
So like as you saw, that guillotine was pretty good.
Mhm.
So I think I fought the way I needed to fight that fight.
For sure, for sure. You got the victory. You got the points. When you go back home, do you take a short break or do you just get right back into it for yourself?
A little, just to kind of tie up odds and ends, because real life continues to happen when you're locked down for 17 days. And we had just opened a gym last year, right before the pandemic, so we got a lot going on. But I was in pretty quick. Like I had some teammates fighting 2 days later, so I had literally got off the flight to Minnesota and hopped right in the car down to Iowa for some of my teammates' fights. So it's a lifestyle. So we were just kind of rolling through, and then you pick it up again. But obviously you're starting in pretty good shape, and weight is less of an issue. So it feels good though. I mean, I'm always somebody who's really enjoyed fighting frequently. So this is really nice, just knowing when the next one is, and you can plan for it. You can plan for having somebody take your classes and all that stuff.
Well, it's the Muay Thai mentality, right? Like you just fight,
100%.
fight, fight.
I would fight every 3 weeks if I could. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, for
totally.
sure. Like you said, your teammates were fighting, which keeps your mind in the game, right? If you get out there and you relax a little too much, you kind of, it's like not having a job. You know what I mean? Like you don't
Yeah.
not want to have a job, but once you get into the flow of
Yeah.
just sitting around, you're just like, oh, I'm comfortable with this. This is not that bad.
Right. Right. Totally.
So, so that's
So
good.
yeah.
Now the training camp, not really a training camp, right? It's just like a continuation of training for you heading into this next fight.
Kind of. They were really non-committal about who we were fighting until, I mean, right before we were leaving. Like we had a week and a half or something. Um, so you kind of have like an idea of who's in the tournament. I wasn't sure who they were going to put me with. But I think it's a matter of being honest with yourself about what your strengths and weaknesses are, and understanding fights that are likely to happen at some point, and continuing to build off that, and just making sure you're in shape. I think that's the cool thing about tournaments, is they're really revealing. Um, you can change a little bit in 2 months, but not a lot. So when you enter the tournament, you got to come in with what you need for the most part. And it's just a matter of sharpening a little bit and getting in the right headspace for the kind of fight you anticipate having, I think. Or at least that's my approach to it.
And another aspect I think a lot of people don't talk about is peaking at the right moment, right?
Mm,
Like
yeah.
it's like a hard, I don't know, it's a hard thing to do. You know what I mean? It's a hard concept to grasp as a person like me that watches the sport, is because a lot of fighters don't really talk about that. It's very rare. For yourself, like how do you get yourself in that like I time yourself up to where you could peak at the right moment?
I think it's more like understanding the feel in your own body. Um, like you can, and especially like having this many fights back to back, if you haven't done that kind of thing before, I think it's really easy to overcook. Um, and then your performance starts to go down, because obviously gearing up for the first one, you can't gear up exactly the second same way. There's no need to. But you also don't want to get complacent and coast too much. So it's definitely something that I think takes getting used to in your own body, and it's something that you have to be sensitive to, and you can't. There's not like a formula for it. Like, oh, you should do this and this and this. Your body will tell you. But I think it's also just a matter of being experienced enough to listen to it.
All right, now your upcoming opponent, Mariana, she has faced many of the top women in the world. If you go look at her
Yeah.
resume, it's insane who she has faced so
Yes.
far. And what is your outlook of the matchup and the skill set that she possesses?
I think she's tough. I think she's got some power in her shots. Obviously, she laid out, was it Damani? Somebody recently. Um, but also she's fought at 125. So she, even if she weighs in at 55 or heavier, she's and that was fairly recent, right? Like going up weight classes works, but it's different when you put on the weight fast versus slow. So I think I would say this about any fighter, not just one fighting me, that's a challenge going in. But I think it'll be a fun fight.
Do you think
I think
stylistically, like it's
striker.
it's a
So
better, yeah, it's a striker, so you know, It's kind of like it's like you're hungrier to get in there, right? Compared to a grappler, I guess. Could you say that?
Well, I would say I would say it like this, like, and who knows what she's gonna do because she has to understand she needs 6 points. So she might decide to fight differently, but the idea that I might get to go out there and fight exactly how I prefer and really like to fight, that's exciting to me. Um, but you know, you got to be prepared for anything. It, this is this is high stakes. So anybody you're fighting, they know you're standing between them and $1 million. So and vice versa, right? So it changes things a little bit, I think, sometimes. So we'll see. You know, I have an idea how I think it's gonna go, but I also know like it may be different than I'm thinking.
Yeah, and if you look at the standings, you're tied for third with Jenna Fabian with 3 points. Does that give you any urgency to go out there and finish the fight? Did you see the Roy
Yeah,
McDonald Gleison Tebow like decision? A
I
lot
didn't
of people
watch
are
it,
talking
but
about.
I saw the disappointment on his face walking around
Mhm.
this morning.
Oh, okay, okay.
Um, and it's just, you know, it happens to everybody, but it's just, um, it's I saw a lot of complaints about the judging,
Mm.
and frankly, whether you get the judges or not, 3 points might not be enough to keep you in the final, depending on how the rest of the fights go.
Yeah,
So it's not even just about winning; it's
yeah.
about winning decisively enough that you're damn sure in that top four. And so yeah, it does. It is a motivator for me for sure.
For
It's
sure.
different.
Yeah, especially if the first fight you got the finish, then it's in the second fight you kind of
Exactly. You're
relax a
like,
little
oh,
bit, right?
yeah. But seeing, you know, what I know these other women are capable of, and seeing the way it shakes out, it's like, all right, time to put the pedal to the metal here.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely.
Yeah, I like that attitude, and I think your opponent's gonna be going all out too. You know what I mean? Because like you said, she
Yep.
does need 6 points.
100%. She knows.
Yeah.
She's even more so than me because she knows it's one thing will maybe
Hmm.
make her maybe work, right? So
That's what makes this season so much more intriguing compared to the other seasons because there's not as many spots, and
right.
the season's not as long, so it's good.
Well, and that's just it. You could win both your fights and not
Mhm.
make the final.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
makes sense, you
yeah.
know. So it's got to be more than that.
For sure. Now, in the main event of the night, you got Cindy Dandua, who you faced first against
Yeah.
Kayla Harrison. Do you think there's a possibility that Harrison might be overlooking Dandua a little bit from like watching interviews?
Like I just said, I think a lot of people do. Um, I don't know Kayla well enough to know. You know, she's an experienced athlete. Um, but I think it's really easy for people to overlook Sydney. Um, and you know, a lot of the time it doesn't work well if they overlook her. So, again, like you have somebody who is Olympic caliber judo versus somebody who has made judo work really well in MMA. So I think that's like a particularly interesting thing because usually in that case, one of two things happens. The person with the more advanced traditional version of the art will uh, steamroll the other one, or the other person who has been fighting longer knows just enough about their sport to negate the stuff they're doing and make them turn it more into an MMA fight. So um, I don't. I mean, I could honestly see a lot of different scenarios playing out in that fight, and I don't think it's as cut and dry as everyone thinks it is.
Yeah, yeah. And I talked to Cindy, ahead of the fight, and
Uh,
she's thinking it might turn into a striking battle, and Kayla's been working on her striking too a lot in the recent years, and you've seen the development. As an expert of striking, what do you think about her development? And
uh, I think she's got a lot of power, and I think what judokas have um, coming in that a lot of other people don't have is they have elite balance. So balance is really, really important in striking, and we've seen this however many times. Like you can hit somebody with a shot that looks like it's gonna be super hard, but if your feet falling all over yourself, there's nothing on it. But judo players are really balanced, right? They have to be. They're hitting these throws mid, you know, they're like mid throw and hitting reversals and stuff. So and just like the way she's built, I would bet that she's got more heat on her shots than Cindy does. But man, Cindy's got a hell of a chin. So it'll be interesting.
Yes, yes, definitely interesting. And another interesting aspect of this season is Clarissa Shields. You know, she made her MMA debut, and I
Yeah.
thought it was such an interesting fight because Brittany, she controlled the fight for so much. She had her in the mount for so long, and for someone that's a jiu-jitsu expert, she just couldn't get a submission in there. And Clarissa came back in the third round, and that ground and pound was nasty. What did you think of
Yeah.
how everything transpired?
You know, I think Clarissa did a really good job I mean, she's brand spanking new. And I remember thinking when they matched her with Brittany, I was like, man, I don't know if boxing handlers understand that a 3-6 in MMA is not like a 3-6 in boxing. Like, it's not like we have professional people who would just are like, I'm here to collect my check, like you see in boxing, and they lay down for somebody. Like, even 3-6 is not going to lay down for you. So I thought that was like an interesting choice of matchup in the first place. But she did a good job of dealing with it for sure. I mean, she was in some bad spots and stayed cool. So it was really good for her. You know, I haven't heard anything from Brittany about it. I'm curious how things felt from her perspective, but so often, and you know this, so often when fighters are interviewed, they're not always telling like their full story or experience, you know, because sometimes they'll get a hard time about making excuses or something, but sometimes it's just reasons stuff did or didn't work. So I would be really curious to hear about that fight from her perspective and what she felt and how it was going.
Yeah, I think she was saying, yeah, maybe I'm wrong, but elbows would have been made that fight completely different, especially in that mount position. And I kind of, I agree with her. But, the rules are the rules. You got to follow the rules. That's what PFL does. So,
well, that's it. And I mean, you know, I think a lot of what PFL is trying to do is make fighting more of a sport. And elbows are super effective and they look super gruesome and they terrify people. So I'll be honest though, it bums me the hell out that we don't have them. But yeah, like when you agree to fight somebody in a certain rule set, that's the rule set you're fighting under. You knew about it when you signed. You know, as much as me too. Even in my last fight, I was like, man, I want an elbow right now. I remember thinking it, and I was like, I can't.
there are many moments where I'm watching your fight and I'm watching Kayla's fights, and when she's got someone on the ground, I'm
like,
thinking she's thinking that right now.
Yeah, but
It's
yeah, who knows? Maybe they'll change it eventually. I think originally when they instated that rule, they were having multiple fights in a night, so that makes a little more sense. Like, but cuts heal in a couple weeks, so
yeah,
maybe they'll change it. Who knows?
for sure. Campaign for that. But
Right.
man, there's with Clarissa, fighting more often, most likely she's gonna get a couple more fights, and I could see a fight between you and her down the line.
Sure.
That would be great, right?
I would. Yeah.
Yeah. Sign you up. Well, anyways, you got you got your next steps in this tournament. June 26th. Kaitlin, thank you so much for the time.
Yeah.
I'm excited to
Sure.
see what you can do, and the showdown, I guess, would be you and Kayla. So hopefully that happens. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hopefully it does. Thank you.
Take a move in the ring. You can hit me with the words you fling.